I'm Millie Weaver, and you're watching the Millennial Millie Show. So today we're going to be going over the televised January 6th hearings, which, to be honest with you, after watching it, I now am certain, I feel confident that I've just seen the worst abuse of power I've ever seen in the history of our country. It's disgusting that the Democrats can put on this show, this clown show, and make all of these wild and insightful accusations against President Trump and against their political opponents, all in the name of taking out their political opponents right before the midterms. And the reason why this is an abuse of power is because this is a circus show. And it's not even a proper hearing, in that you would think it was, the way that they're having it roll out by presenting these video testimony, little tiny edited clips of certain people around Trump and his administration, which we don't know if the clips they're presenting are taken out of context or what context the person meant to say that statement in. And the problem with this is that there's no due process here. Trump and his people are not being given a defense attorney. They're not being given the ability to respond or to object, to say, oh, this is hearsay, it shouldn't even be before the court. So this whole thing, people are thinking of it like it's a hearing, like you would see with the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard hearings recently, when this is just another one of these sham televised intelligence committee hearings or congressional hearings like they kind of had with the impeachment hearings. So how can anyone think that it's anything other than just another bogus attempt to impeach President Trump? And in this case, impeach him from potentially running in the future in 2024. The American people can see through what you guys are doing, and we're over it. We're disgusted. And I'm hoping that come the midterms in November, that people are going to vote, and hopefully there will be such a landslide in the election that the people who are perpetuating this abuse of power will all be voted out and be done away with. Now, we can talk a little bit about whether or not we think that the election is going to be free and fair in 2024, but that's another subject for another day. Let's talk about January 6th and these ridiculous hearings and what all went on inside the hearings. So one of the first things we really saw was this man giving this long narration monologue about President Trump and his actions. And he essentially makes these claims that Trump was unwilling to accept the results, the election results in 2020, and that therefore he planned and conspired to incite people to commit an act of insurrection on the Capitol, commit a violent act, and that he did all these things. And then he, of course, makes all these references to white supremacy and racism and extremism, and really kind of goes there. And then we have next, so this is our first character in this clown show. Before we go next, I'll show you a little clip of just how he sounds. I mean, if I were to cast him in a movie, I'd probably cast like Morgan Freeman or something because of like the way his accent sounds. But just this little clip will give you a little taste and idea of what his monologue was like.
Uphold our own oath and count your votes to ensure the transfer of power, just as we've done for hundreds of years. But unlike in 1814, it was domestic enemies of the Constitution who stormed the Capitol and occupied the Capitol, who sought to thwart the will of the people to stop the transfer of power. And so they did, so at the encouragement of the President of the United States. The President of the United States trying to stop the transfer of power, a precedent that had stood for 220 years, even as our democracy had faced its most difficult test. Thinking back again to the Civil War in the summer of 1864, the President of the United States believed we would be doomed to his bid for re-election. He believed his opponent, General George McClellan, would wave the white flag when it came to preserving the Union. But even with
So, by comparing this to situations that happened with Lincoln and the Confederates and everything else like that, he's really painting the picture here that this was like a second attempt from that Confederate South that wanted slavery, that wanted racism, to try to take back the country from the good guys, the Yankees or whatever. And so, or the Union. So he's really dramatic. This is very dramatic, because this is a clown show. It's very dramatic. This would never be allowed in, say, an actual hearing where we're actually talking about people, whether or not they committed a crime or something be presented as evidence, because it's all just baloney. It's drama. It's theater. Okay? It's ridiculous. So he just gives this long diatribe, which I'm not going to torture you guys. If you want to watch this on your own, go ahead. But it is really just them saying a lot of the same things over and over again. Next, we have Miss Cheney, who really, she's an establishment as it gets, but she's pretty bad here. And we see a lot of her throughout this hearing, not going to lie. So here's a taste of her.
Instead, he justified it. These are the things and events that happen, he said, when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who've been badly and unfairly treated for so long. As you will see in the hearings to come, President Trump believed his supporters at the Capitol, and I quote, "We're doing what they should be doing." This is what he told his staff as they pleaded with him to call off the mob, to instruct his supporters to leave. Over a series of hearings in the coming weeks, you will hear testimony, live and on video, from more than half a dozen former White House staff in the Trump administration, all of whom were in the West Wing of the White House on January 6th. You will hear testimony that, quote, "The president did not really want to put anything out, calling off the riot or asking his supporters to leave." You will hear that President Trump was yelling and, quote, "really angry at advisors who told him he needed to be doing something more."
So what she's referencing here is that you're going to be hearing more and more of these depositions where we know that the January 6th House Committee, they held all of these private, secretive hearings and did all these subpoenas, which required people to essentially turn up for the subpoena or else you risk being arrested. And we saw that happen with Steve Bannon when he didn't want to turn up for the election. And then we also saw that with recently Peter Navarro. He was arrested because he didn't show up. Some of these people, they actually had executive privilege, and the House committee hearings wanting them to breach their executive privilege, they really didn't have a right to do that. And so some of these people actually filed federal lawsuits alleging that their rights were being violated and that this was unconstitutional. It was abuse of power. And other people did choose to show up to the hearings but pled the fifth, which honestly, I think that there's nothing sus about somebody pleading the fifth. They have every right to plead the fifth. We have the Fifth Amendment guarantees us our right to not self-incriminate. And when you have a sham of a witch hunt, okay, going on, all mostly Democrats in this committee, mind you, okay, it is a heavily biased committee. And they're just going after political opponents and anyone who is around Trump in what I believe to be an act of revenge, okay, to take out who they hate, essentially, and their political opponents. So it's a smart move to plead the fifth in that instance, because we saw what happened with the whole Russia collusion baloney that went on, where now it's known that there was nothing to the Russia collusion, that the dossiers were bogus, Hillary was all part of it. Wonderful how they all get off on everything every time. I mean, they get away with every single crime they commit. If you're a Democrat, if you've got a D by your name, you get away with it. But even those who just showed up, who were like, well, I have nothing to hide, and answered questions that the FBI had, the FBI then later figures out a way to turn it into process crimes, you know, or say, oh, you lied, or you said this, but it was really this. And then the person's like, oh, well, wait a second. You know, not everyone's memory is perfect, okay? Not everyone has this like super perfect memory that they can recall every single thing. So it's a smart move to, you know, plead the fifth in these cases where it's clearly a political witch hunt. And see, my analysis of what the strategy here has been for a time has been that they were circling the wagons with these private hearings, okay? And in doing so, they wanted to kind of get the outskirts of people around Trump and move their way in. And as they're doing so, they can, because it's all private, they can play that like cop tactic or cop game where they're like, well, so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that. So you're looking at this and this and this. So, you know, you can make a deal with us to give us a false testimony or give us a testimony that says this, and then, you know, we'll go easy on you, or we'll give you immunity, or we'll, you know. So that's the tactics that typical law enforcement do in these type of instances. And we don't know to what level degree they're working with the DOJ on this. Okay, they've spoken about somewhat of involvement with the DOJ. But clearly right now, they don't have enough against anyone, because if they did, they wouldn't be doing this investigation and this sham. They would just be arresting people. Okay? So the whole point here is to call people in, force them to testify, fleece information out of them, try to turn people on each other, and then, of course, circle the wagons till finally you can try to nail Trump for something. What I think they're actually going to try to nail Trump for, I don't think that they have anything on any type of conspiracy or that he conspired to do anything on January 6th, right? So I'm not sure. I mean, they have kind of insinuated along those lines that this was some conspiracy of his to do this, but I think that what they're actually really after is, I think they're just after a basic like incitement where, you know, because they're not going to be able to prove that Trump was communicating with these groups like Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, like, because that's just, you know, baloney, right? That they're trying to nail it on. But I think they're just going to try to just blanket go for incitement. I think that that's what their aim is here. And I think that their aim is to just make everything so televised that they can try to convince the whole country that Trump and all these people are just these horrible villains that need to be all like hung for treason or something. And what they're painting is so one-sided. There's no opposing argument to anything of what they're saying because it's not a proper due process, essentially. All right, so let's continue here. So one of the other things we saw was testimony from Bill Barr, and I swear, it's like they have all these little statements. I don't know if each of these people are just people who have decided to just turn their back on Trump, which, just from what I've heard, my guess would be, as far as Bill Barr goes, yes. But some of them, I think that their statements were just kind of misused and out of context. And that's why I think it would be key to actually have a fair hearing where you actually get to hear argument from both sides and not just from one side. This is like as if a prosecutor and the state just held a big hearing against one person or one group of people, and all we heard throughout the hearing was just their one side. And we didn't hear anything from the defense or anything. We just only hear the one side. That's not fair. That's not justice. That's not the American people getting to see justice or getting to see what really happened. So how can the American people think this is anything other than a clown show and just a sham?
The election. President Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr also told Donald Trump his election claims were wrong.
Repeatedly told the president in no uncertain terms that I did not see evidence of fraud, and that would have affected the outcome of the election. And frankly, a year and a half later, I haven't seen anything to change my mind on that.
Attorney General Barr also told...
Okay, so Attorney General Bill Barr, he says, okay, I haven't seen enough evidence that there was election fraud, right? I haven't seen that there was evidence, right? Yeah, I mean, if you close your eyes, it's not easy to see, is it? You can choose to not see. But at the same time, who is he? Is he some kind of an expert on election analysis? Is he a cybersecurity expert? Is he someone who would actually be able to look at data electronically and see whether machines were tampered with? Is he someone who has any authority on elections and their security? No. Okay, so he's just saying, well, I didn't see blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, so they're referencing this one person, Bill Barr, who they say, oh, Bill Barr is close to Trump, and Bill Barr was telling Trump that he didn't see anything. Therefore, Trump didn't have anything to base his argument on that there was potentially all this election fraud in 2020. So he was just doing it on his own, despite all these people around him telling him otherwise. Well, what about the people that were around Trump that were presenting him with evidence? We don't get to hear about that, do we? We don't get to hear testimony from those people, do we? So, another example of how this is a sham. And it's really interesting to see that many of the people who actually they used in these deposition hearings against Trump and the Trump people, really, Trump supporters, many of the people they're using are people who, if you were paying attention to politics for the last 4 years throughout 2016 through 2020, these were the people that the people in the conservative movement were complaining about constantly and were suspicious about constantly. So is it any wonder that many of these people are now the people being presented in the deposition hearings as evidence against Trump? And I know I heard a lot of people previously talking about they didn't trust Ivanka Trump. They didn't trust her husband, Jared Kushner. And then they use a statement from Ivanka Trump in this hearing. But at the same time, is the statement just something out of context? Okay? We don't know what she meant by the statement. If you're to interrogate someone and present the statement in a typical hearing, okay, they would present her statement and then they would ask her a question about it on the stand. And they'd be like, what did you mean by this? What did you mean by that? See, we don't get to see any of that. There's none of that. This is a sham. This is not justice.
Overturn the election.
How did that affect your perspective about the election when Attorney General Barr made that statement?
It affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr. So I accepted what he was saying.
As you will hear on Monday, the president had every right to litigate his campaign claims, but he ultimately lost more than 60 cases in state and federal courts. The president's claims in the election cases were so frivolous and unsupported that the president's lead lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, not only lost the lawsuits, his license to practice law was suspended. Here's what the court said of Mr. Giuliani. Giuliani communicated demonstrably false and misleading statements to courts, lawmakers, and the public at large in his capacity as lawyer for former President Donald J. Trump and the Trump campaign in connection with Trump's failed effort at re-election in 2020. As you will see in great detail in
Okay, so a Democrat judge in New York decided to make this ruling and make this statement about Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney. Well, gee, so you're presenting as evidence a biased opinion from a biased judge in a biased hearing and presenting as though it's fact and not giving anyone the ability to respond. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is totally free and fair. I mean, this is this is justice. This is evidence, right? I mean, just because some judge says something that's a Democrat, and then this lady up here, establishment hack, with this heavily biased Democrat dominant committee. And mind you, all the evidence I've seen with January 6th was that the real conspirators behind January 6th is the Democrat Party and the establishment rhinos. So that's what I've seen, and I'm going to be presenting that after we go through some of the clips highlighting what happened in the hearing. After that, I'm going to be showing you the evidence I have that refutes some of their clips. And the mountain of evidence that I have really pertaining to January 6th is so immense, and it's exactly why I went out to Florida and handed it all over again to Trump's legal team, because what I have is so immense, so thorough. It really paints the picture as to who is behind the January 6th conspiracy plot. And let me tell you, it ain't Trump. And that's why I haven't been subpoenaed, and they will not subpoena me. I would be highly surprised if they ever tried to subpoena me to their January 6th committee hearings, because first thing I'm going to do is put everything out there on the record as to the left's involvement, and as to the Democrat Party's involvement, and as to the rhino involvement in the conspiracy and the plot behind January 6th. Because let's get this straight. Who benefited from that? Did Trump benefit from it? Really? You're telling me Trump benefited from that? No. Because here we are today. Look who's benefiting. Okay? And look at the exact timing. They even show the exact timing throughout this hearing of when it all happened. And it was literally before the voting or any of that stuff happened. It was before. We didn't get to see what was going to happen. We didn't even get to see what Pence was or wasn't going to do. Okay? And even if Pence didn't, because he didn't necessarily have the power and authority, like factually, he did not have the power and authority. Okay? But the Republican senators and congressmen and women actually had a lot of power and authority to object to slights of electors. Okay? And we could have seen a lot of that. We could have seen a lot of evidence being presented on the record. Witness testimony. They could have presented witnesses up there talking about election discrepancy. We didn't get to see any of that because it was all literally stopped from happening when agitators, provocateurs decided to barge into the Capitol. And mind you, some of these provocateurs, many of them were dressed in black bloc. One of them we've identified as John Sullivan, who just so happened to take his mask off for whatever reason. We don't know. We don't know if it was tear gas. We don't know if he just, for whatever reason, just decided to take it off. But where's the video evidence of, for example, like Proud Boy leader or Joe Biggs in there, right? Where's the video evidence of him screaming on camera, burn this, down, smashing windows? Where's that evidence of him? But he's still locked behind bars. He is, isn't he? I don't think he's probably seen daylight for a very long time. And meanwhile, John Sullivan runs free. Running out there, pretending to be a journalist, saying he's doing coverage on Ukraine. How convenient. Remember how originally his alibi was that he was there filming a Netflix documentary with Jade Sacker, his companion, right? And then that evolved into that he was filming, or that now he was a reporter there, a journalist, and how that kept mutating. And then finally you look into the background and you find out he was there as an Antifa. He was there wearing his black bloc. He had told people to come ahead of time. The whole thing was pre-planned. He met with a group of people there with his 226 Antifa, according to his brother, James Sullivan. And that they met up at the Washington Monument and apparently walked on over to the Capitol. So all that digital footprint is there. Okay? And so what I'm getting at here is, are we going to see that in the hearing? Are we going to see any of the evidence that shows that there were radical left-wing groups there doing this? Are we going to see that? And if so, why won't they let the evidence I have be seen on the Sunrise Exposed groups? The left-wing affinity groups that were pre-plotting a literal attack on the Capitol building. Okay, and we're going to get more into that in a minute here, but I don't want us to lose too much focus on what's going on here. Okay, so now she shows a clip of Mike Pence. So let's go to this.
Focus on President Trump's efforts to pressure Vice President Mike Pence to refuse to count electoral votes on January 6th. Vice President Pence has spoken publicly about this.
President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone. And frankly, there is no idea more un-American than the notion that any one person could choose the American president.
What President Trump demanded that Mike Pence do wasn't just wrong, it was illegal and it was unconstitutional. You will hear this in great detail from the Vice President's former general counsel. Witnesses in these hearings will explain how the former Vice President and his staff informed President Trump over and over again that what he was pressuring Mike Pence to do was illegal. As you will hear,
actually, what he was talking about with Mike Pence wasn't illegal. It was legal, and it was all a proper thing to do if there ever was an event where there was an election that had a lot of election discrepancies, and if there were enough instances of voter fraud or election thievery, that these were natural checks and balances that were at the disposal of our representatives, and that they are capable and able to do that. And what would have happened or could have happened was that it would have gone into a different type of scenario where it would have been put down to each state casting a vote. Okay, that's what would have happened. And the Democrats didn't want that to happen, because if it did, it was guaranteed that Trump would have stayed in office. See, so they didn't want the evidence of election fraud to be heard or seen in the hearing. They didn't want to give the opportunity for the Republicans to even be pressured into, doing their electoral slates or not putting them in, and giving Pence the opportunity to do what he was going to do. All of that was literally thwarted by these people running in and stampeding at that very moment in time. So who benefited again by that happening at that exact time? Because the second that happened, the entire narrative flipped into, oh my gosh, it's a terrorist attack. It's so horrible. These extremist, horrible Trump supporters. It gave them the moral ammo they needed to demonize all Trump supporters, demonize Trump, get the moral high ground so that now all these rhinos could just about face against Trump without worrying about later getting voted out or feeling like, they wouldn't have the moral authority or moral high ground to do that. And it just really made everyone forget about all of the evidence that was going to be heard and seen. And I remember in that speech that was given by Rudy Giuliani at the Ellipse, where he literally was talking about all this evidence that we're all going to see. And there's going to be all these hearings that happen. It was going to be like a couple-day thing where we actually got to see all this evidence presented prior to the final vote and certification. And so none of that happened, to the benefit of the Democrats and the establishment rhinos. And the reports I'd done in the past with the Kentucky election theft that happened there, which, guys, I am broadcasting on YouTube right now. I'm probably going to get banned for this, or at least this video is probably going to get taken down. But you know what? Whatever. It is what it is. Remember, you'll be able to follow me on millennialmillie.com or on QUX. So just remember that. Now, this is the thing. We were going to see all that evidence. We didn't get to see it. And I'm going to tell you why after we watch some more of these clips. Because I'm going to show you how the Democrats had a lot more to do with this plot than we know. Or at least than what they're presenting in these bogus hearings. All right, so next we see there's a bunch of different things. They also have like a thing from General Millie, his statement.
Very direct, unambiguous orders. There was no question about that. And he was
and I can get you the exact quotes, I guess, from some of our records somewhere, but he was very animated, very direct, very firm, and to Secretary Miller. Get the military down here, get the Guard down here, put down this situation, etc.
By contrast, here is General Milley's description of his conversation with President Trump's Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, on January 6th.
He said, we have to kill the narrative that the Vice President is making all the decisions. We need to establish the narrative that that the President is still in charge and that things are steady or stable or what's that thing. I immediately interpret that as politics, politics, politics. Red flag for me personally, no action, but I remember it distinctly.
And you will hear from witnesses how the day played out inside the White House, how multiple White House staff resigned in disgust, and how President Trump would not ask his supporters to leave the Capitol. It was only after multiple hours of violence that President Trump finally released a video instructing the riotous mob to leave.
Okay, so the very beginning of that clip, we heard General Milley talking about how Pence gave this really firm order to call in the National Guard on the day of January 6th after the storming of the Capitol. And then he says that Meadows, that, from the Trump camp, essentially, that they were really lackadaisical and were saying that we just need to establish that Trump's the one in charge, not Pence. And they're using this to try to paint the argument that Trump wanted all of this to happen on January 6th and that he let it happen and everything else. Well, what they're not talking about is they're not talking about how President Trump ordered or requested there to be 10,000 National Guard troops there days leading up to January 6th. He had requested that to Christopher Miller. And Christopher Miller's response back to him, essentially, was that he had to receive an order, right? An order from the Capitol Police. So we're going to get more into this now, all right? This is a key thing because they keep trying to paint this argument that Trump plotted to do this, he wanted this to happen, and that this is all a grand conspiracy to incite people to go do this by Trump. Problem is when there's evidence out there that counters that conflicts with that, that's called confliction. So what do they have to do? They have to try to destroy that evidence, bury that evidence, and cover it up with new baloney narratives. Almost said a bad word. Okay, so this is what we see here today, trending on Twitter. There is no evidence that Trump requested troops to secure the Capitol or consulted Pelosi ahead of January 6th insurrection. Fact checkers say. And what are they citing? A PolitiFact article. And come on, okay? You got to read this. So here's the PolitiFact article. So, all right, so you're thinking if PolitiFact put out this fact-checking article, it must mean that they have some kind of evidence that points to the contrary, that points out that no, Trump didn't request evidence. And they don't. They don't actually have any evidence of anything. So what are they even saying? What they're saying is they're saying there's no evidence that he did. Yeah, there's no evidence that Trump made a request for 10,000 national troops to be deployed for a rally he held that preceded the January 6th attack on the Capitol. There's no evidence that Pelosi denied such a request. So they're just saying there's an absence of evidence. So how can you say that you fact-checked it to be false when your falsification is based on a lack of evidence? That doesn't even make sense. That's like saying, we know Jennifer Aniston is pregnant because we don't have any proof that she's not. Like, that doesn't make any sense, okay? That's not how logic works, and that's not how truth tables work. That's not how you fact check something. When all of the research I've done and known about, because I've been staying on top of this subject, is in fact, the evidence supports that he did request for 10,000 National Guard troops. And what evidence do I have to back that claim up? Well, we have witness testimony. See, that's something that could be put into a court in a hearing. So Trump himself, he has said that he did this, and he could write an affidavit to that, and that would be seen as evidence. Trump says he told the Pentagon 10,000 National Guard troops would be needed January 6th, but was ignored. Was this corroborated? Is there anyone that backed up what Trump was saying? Yes. Defense Secretary Christopher Miller, in an interview, in which he wasn't pro-Trump in this interview. He did, in fact, say that. Okay? So let's read a little bit of this article because this is key. Now, this is Trump saying it in an interview. I said, look, this rally is going to be bigger than anyone thinks, Trump told Fox News host Stephen Hilton Sunday night. And I think that you should have 10,000. I think I gave that number. I definitely gave the number of 10,000 National Guardsmen. And I think you should have 10,000 of the National Guard ready. So that's Trump's statement on it. And then that matches what Miller told a reporter and former CIA lawyer, Adam Sarolsky, who wrote on a fly-on-the-wall account of Miller's final week at the Pentagon for Vanity Fair, "You're going to need 10,000 people." No, I'm not talking bull, you know what? He said that. Miller told Sarolsky of his conversation with Trump. You're going to need 10,000. That's what he said, swear to God. So Miller is corroborating this statement. Then you see, okay, so it says accounts that diverge. They took that number, from what I understand, they gave it to the people at the Capitol, which is controlled by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and I heard they reject it because they didn't think it would look so good. So, that was a big mistake. So that's actually what I've fact-checked to be true, is that, yes, Nancy Pelosi did reject it because of optics, okay? It's in the article. So let's go over here to this next. Oh, look, even here, flawed intelligence, not bad optics, right? They're trying to make an excuse for it here, but let's go to this letter. This is a letter that was written by the Capitol Police officer that resigned. Let's see if I can find my article here. He resigned right after January 6th. Yeah, right here. U.S. Capitol Police Chief resigns amid outrage over D.C. security lapse. So, U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund resigned hours after livid House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called for his ouster. She removed the House Sergeant at Arms over the failure to protect Congress against violent, marauding pro-Trump protesters. Well, hold on a minute. The House Sergeant of Arms is literally at the discretion of Nancy Pelosi. So the Speaker of the House is who gives the orders to the Sergeant of Arms, and the Sergeant of Arms carries out her orders. So if Nancy Pelosi were to have ordered the National Guard be there at the Capitol, she would have given the order to the Sergeant of Arms, and the Sergeant of Arms would have given the order to this Chief Stephen Sund of the Capitol Police, and then he would have been able to give the order in contact with the National Guard to have the National Guard there. So there's a problem here, and it looks like Nancy Pelosi, right after, immediately threw these two guys under the bus, and they resigned. Well, let's look at the letter that the U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund wrote. Let's get into this. So, let's start up here. This is key, guys. Bear with me on some of this. On January 4th, I approached the two sergeant-at-arms to request the assistance of the National Guard, as I had no authority to do so without an emergency declaration by the Capitol Police Board. My regular interactions with the CPB outside of our monthly meetings regarding law enforcement matters were conducted with the House and Senate Sergeant at Arms, the two members of the CPB who had law enforcement experience. I first spoke with the House Sergeant at Arms to request the National Guard. Mr. Irving stated that he was convinced about the optics and didn't feel that the intelligence supported it. Now, notice this whole convinced about the optics thing here and that he didn't support it. What you're essentially hearing is what Nancy Pelosi didn't support. And here it is. Here's what I just read so you can see. It's this paragraph here. But the House Sergeant of Arms is supposed to do what the Speaker of the House tells him or her to do. Same with the Senate Sergeant of Arms. They do what the Senate Majority Leader tells them to do. So, okay, interesting. Let's keep going here. Let's keep going with this article. This is key information. He passed the buck off to the Senate Sergeant at Arms, who's currently the chair of the CPB, to get his thoughts on the request. I then spoke to Mr. Stenger and again requested the National Guard. Instead of approving the use of the National Guard, however, Mr. Stenger suggested I ask them how quickly we could get support if needed, and to lean forward in case we had to request assistance on January 6th. So clearly, they knew that there was a possible threat. They're having these conversations, clearly. Christopher Miller is contacting the Capitol Police. The National Guard's contacting. They're all saying, hey, are we going to get an order? Are we going to get an order? You know, because we can totally facilitate. But the problem is Speaker Nancy Pelosi didn't direct the Sergeant of Arms to give the orders. If the Sergeant of Arms gave the order, there would have been 10,000 National Guard troops there, and we wouldn't have seen what happened on January 6th happen. But that's what they don't want us to talk about. Even in their little recent January 6th hearing, they said, what we're not going to do, this is a quote from Liz Cheney. She says, what we're not going to do is we're not going to blame the Capitol Police, many of who risked their lives. We're not going to blame them for failing to protect the Capitol. You know what? Okay, that's fair, because even the Capitol Police leader, you know, the chief, was requesting for there to be National Guard there on the 4th. We should be blaming Nancy Pelosi because she didn't direct her Sergeant of Arms to have the troops there. And I had plenty of evidence that there were going to be extremists that were likely, that were it was always a very large possibility that they were going to storm the Capitol, given that they had an ArcGIS map literally outlining out the Capitol and had listed their timeline of events starting on election night all the way up until Inauguration Day, and literally had January 6th as a bullet point, hot point date. Okay, so let's keep going here, because there's just so much here to unpack, okay? So look at this. GOP doubles down on claim Pelosi rejected National Guard before January 6th riot. So even the GOP is continuing to be like, no, Nancy Pelosi really did reject the National Guard before January 6th. And this is bizarre, because this is even a Newsweek article, which I'm not sure if they're posting it from another site, but this Newsweek article, it starts off saying, House Republican leaders on Thursday repeated debunked claims. How are these debunked? And if you're going to make an assertion that something's debunked, please provide the evidence that debunked it. Debunked claims that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi rejected an offer for the National Guard to be sent to the U.S. Capitol in the lead up to the attacks on January 6th. So they're insinuating that House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican Representatives Jim Banks, Elise Stefanik, and others, and Republican Whip Steve Scalise, that these Republican representatives who are, in theory, you know, they're supposed to be seen as honorable members of Congress or of the court, in essence. And so if they're saying this, you should take it at face value and then debunk it if you have evidence. But where's your evidence? Where is your evidence? Here's also a track record. Nancy Pelosi has a track record of denying, making it a point to deny Trump's requests for the National Guard. There have been several times. Here's one from her actual, website, from her office. Pelosi sends letter to President Trump on deployment of troops and unidentified law enforcement personnel in the nation's capital. So she had already denied the requests for National Guard that Trump had made previously. And this was a request during the whole George Floyd riots and whatnot. But so we have a history, a proven track record of Nancy Pelosi denying National Guard and saying it wasn't good for optics, and basically trying to say that Trump was like a dictator and didn't want to give him any power. And then we also have the GOP leaders saying it. And then we also have this letter where the actual Capitol Police chief who resigned over the whole thing makes this claim as well. We also have Christopher Miller who's made the claim. So clearly, PolitiFact's fact-checked is baloney. It's bull you know what, because this is actual evidence, and I'm showing it to you right here. Let's continue with this letter, though, because there's more here to unpack. At Mr. Stanger's direction, I called General William Walker, commanding officer of the D.C. National Guard. So he actually reaches out to the National Guard. I advised that I had not received CPB approval, but I wanted to know how many National Guard he could provide and how fast he could provide them if they were needed on Capitol Hill on January 6th. He advised that he could repurpose 125 National Guard and have them to me fairly quickly once approved. I asked General Walker to be prepared in the event that we requested them. So he's having to go out on his own and make these like, hey, I didn't get approval to do this, but, we're really concerned. Can you just have people on standby for us? Right? I mean, people were talking and there was a valid concern just because of this. And I'm going to tell you why there's valid concern. When you have hundreds of thousands or even 1 million people all showing up on a very politically volatile day and with a lot of emotions running rampant, you never know if you're going to have those oddball people in the group that could do something bad or harmful or even like a terrorist attacking an event. Okay, you don't know if there's going to be small groups of extremists that try to take advantage of that in some agenda of their own, which is what we saw on January 6th. So even just the idea of when there's an event that large, having extra security or the National Guard, it's not unreasonable. And in most instances for large protesting events, you see it all the time. I can't tell you how many different things I've been to, like the RNC, the DNC, or whatever. They usually have National Guard there. They have big giant fences and barricades up everywhere. Even when they had that pro-gun march in Virginia, they had the National Guard there. And it's just a common thing that you see. And you don't... So it is very off and odd that with this large number of people and knowing that this was going to be a very politically excitable day, where there's obviously going to be one side that's really upset, one side that's happy, you're going to want to have that there just in case. And in this instance, it's like, we have these knuckleheads, agent provocateurs, these agitators, these groups who are known to have FBI infiltration and informants as their leaders, leading the charge. Okay? And they did have meetings with the FBI. So let's go into the letter. On Tuesday, January 5th, I hosted a virtual meeting with my executive team, all 3 principals of the Capitol Police Board, and a dozen of the top law enforcement and military officials from D.C., including the FBI, the U.S. Secret Service, and the National Guard. All of which I was communicating to sending tips off about the Sunrise Exposed information I had, where there were literal radicalized groups of people, protesters, agitators, talking about plotting to take over government buildings, who literally had detailed maps, ArcGIS maps, that redlined out the Capitol as their target. I kid you not. Okay? And I was communicating that to the DC Metro Police. I've got the emails where I was communicating it to Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security. My undercover was directly sending every single thing that we got, Zoom calls, everything that was a red flag, to the FBI's tip lines. So please tell me how they didn't know. Okay, so this is the DHS, where I'm literally communicating with them about the Zoom chats, and how one of the people in the Zoom chats plotting was a former DHS CISA employee who was still in communication with other DHS CISA employees and other federal employees, plotting to overthrow Trump by any means necessary, talking about other radical means that they use and work with these radicalized left-wing protesters, the same radicalized left-wing protesters that they are working with, talking about taking over government buildings, refusing to hand over keys to Trump, etc., etc. This was an article they had, stopping the coup in the nation's capital. Okay? Here, that was me emailing this info to them. So Secret Service, DHS. Okay, so I was communicating with these guys, and that's just some of the emails. And this is my statement. I said, this is March 3rd, 2021. Your statements that the FBI have not seen any evidence that members of Antifa, BLM, or other leftist affinity groups were involved in the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th are false. Your agency and DHS had that evidence beforehand. I can prove it. So I was already tipping them off to the threat. And I'm sure there were plenty of other people as well. So it's just disgusting. They wanted this to happen because they wanted it to happen as political ammo against Trump. So, continuing. This meeting focused on both the January 6th event and the upcoming presidential inauguration on January 20th. During the meeting, no entity, including the FBI, provided any intelligence indicating that there would be a coordinated violent attack on the United States Capitol by thousands of well-equipped, armed insurrectionists. Okay. And we do know that there were well-equipped, armed insurrectionists plotting to attack the Capitol on social media. So how do they, what's the FBI doing, huh? Come on. Nobody's this gullible. This is a screenshot taken off of John Sullivan, who we do know stormed the Capitol on January 6th, dressed in black bloc, advertising his event. Not only did he advertise it on his website, let's all meet up at the Washington Monument at 11 a.m., which then obviously they walked down to the Capitol. He clearly advertises it all over his social media handles, which he had multiple. And then he actually sells the armed tactical gear on his website to his people. So his website and referring people to purchase the riot gear sold on his website.
So properly dressed black bloc, pretty simple, all black. But a lot of people get the misconception, maybe you can wear a black t-shirt that has a logo on it on the sleeve or on the chest. No, you cannot. No logos, guys. Zero, none.
So if you want to continue watching that Psyop the Steel, if you haven't seen it yet, you really need to see it, because it's a documentary that encompasses a lot of the evidence and information I have pertaining to January 6th and what all happened there. But it's just another example of, really? The FBI didn't have information? Come again. Try again. Because no. They did. They clearly had information, and there was a ton of it out there on social media. And I was even providing information to them about the Zoom chats and the violent groups that are known to be violent in DC, talking about taking over government buildings. And gee, when you have a large group of people there, you don't think these groups are going to take opportunity and take advantage of that situation there to try to overrun the Capitol? Come on. We know that there were people in Black Bloc there, smashing in windows, telling people to come up. We saw that even John Sullivan was dressed in a MAGA hat or a Trump hat. How many of these people were dressed up like Trump supporters and they were Antifa? We don't know. See, we only know who they want to show us. The FBI will show all these images and say, find this person, find that person, find this person. Have they already pre-scanned all the faces and know which people they want to pull and which people they don't want to find? You know, it's infuriating. It truly is. And there were a lot of people that actually were wearing face coverings, and we don't know who those people are at the end of the day. So that's not to try to diminish the role that some of these right-wing groups did play. But when we go into the backgrounds of some of these right-wing groups, like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, you start to see this history here of the FBI and the FBI having their hands all over it. So notice inside the Zoom chats that I have with the left-wing affinity groups plotting and working with the federal bureaucracies, the federal bureaucrats, okay? You've got them working with DHS, working with FBI employee people, okay? So you've got this federal bureaucrat influence working with the left-wing groups. The same left-wing groups I show in the Zoom chats were also working with AOC and Chuck Schumer and the Democrat. And endorsed, the same group was endorsed by Bernie Sanders. So you have these groups here heavily coordinating with the federal government. And then you have on the other side the right-wing groups who have been infiltrated by the FBI. For example, the example is with the Oath Keepers, the Gretchen Wheeler case, where there was the kidnapping plot. Look into that. The kidnapping plot shows that there were more FBI agents and FBI turned informants in that whole sting operation than there were actual just organic people going along with it. And all the people that were doing the main acts that were to kidnap her were the FBI informants or the FBI agents. And then they get the people that were just organically there on the little tiny crimes, right? They get them all scooped up. So we know that these groups have FBI problems. Same with like Enrique Tarrio being an FBI informant. All right. It's like we know the Proud Boys have been arrested and scooped up multiple times at these street fights and other things. Wouldn't be so hard to hang some charges over someone's head or a life sentence over someone's head. So we don't know the level of involvement. Really, that has to be uncovered. And the only way to really dig into it would be to actually subpoena the FBI. Or try to get some of these people to start talking. And that's not that easy, is it? We just know what we can find out there on the public record. And what we even found, which Revolver did a piece and looked into a lot of the backgrounds of these people and found a lot of people having histories of being FBI informants. So the FBI's hands are all over this. Even in the beginning of the decision making to not have the National Guard there. The FBI's hands are in the left-wing groups. The FBI's hands are in the right-wing groups. We know the FBI hates Trump. We know Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, all that stuff, all those leaks came out. They were conspiring to get rid of Trump with the whole Russia collusion baloney investigation. So there's a conspiracy, all right. That's for sure. So let's continue on here. It says, this meeting focused on both the January 6th event and the upcoming presidential inauguration. During the meeting, no entity, including the FBI, proved any intelligence indicating that there would be a coordinated violent attack on the United States Capitol by thousands of well-equipped armed insurrectionists. Baloney. In fact, all present at the meeting indicated that there was no new intelligence to report on for January 6th. At no time did the Department of Homeland Security issue a threat advisory bulletin in reference to violent extremists planning a coordinated violent attack on the U.S. Capitol. It should also be noted that the U.S. Secret Service, which, remember, I communicated to, planned to and did escort the Vice President of the United States to the Capitol on January 6th, which it obviously would not have done if it believed there to be a threat of violent insurrection at the Capitol building on its grounds. In the days leading up to January 6th, we briefed a number of members of Congress who had requested an advance briefing of security plans and the permitted demonstration activity. Okay, it goes on and on. So feel free to look this article up if you want to read the rest of it. But I think I showed you most of what I wanted to show you on it so far, which really kind of encompasses this whole idea that, yes, Nancy Pelosi did request or did deny and turn down the request for the National Guard, because she would have been the one to have approved it or denied it, and clearly she did not approve it. And her sergeant of arms cannot act without her approval, and the Capitol Police cannot act without the sergeant of arms, and the National Guard and Christopher Miller can't act without them giving a direct order. So Trump asking Miller and asking all these people, he can't do it on his own. They have to follow the proper chain of command. Nancy was the breach in the chain, okay? So it all goes back on her. Even this article here is pretty damning. This article was published January 4th, 2021, and it goes into depth about kind of the lead up for security to January 6th. So Washington, D.C. mayor calls on the National Guard for expected protests over Biden affirmation vote. So even the D.C. mayor called on the National Guard and had it for the area in D.C. But see, the D.C. mayor does not have jurisdiction over the National Mall and the Capitol. That is Nancy Pelosi. So they couldn't call on the National Guard for anything other than just the surrounding city of D.C. And if you remember, I remember at least because I was in D.C., but a lot of buildings were boarding up their windows. A lot of buildings were closing. They were setting up National Guard, closing off certain streets because they were preparing for a very large protest or demonstration. So, of course, that's usually what cities do in preparation for large protests. It's just odd that the Capitol and National Mall was left so open and vulnerable, almost like they wanted people to be able to break in there. You tell me this, you think if they really wanted to protect the Capitol that people would have got in there? Come on now. I'll tell you what, if someone tried to go have any type of protest outside the Capitol today, especially if they had Trump or MAGA hats on, I'm sure they would have National Guard there, tons of fences, they'd have like snipers on the roof, who knows, right? If they wanted to protect it, they would have. Haven't you seen the White House these days? How many layers of fences they have around the White House? A lot of those fences were put there by Democrats and by Obama. And then once Joe Biden got in, he built another bigger wall around all the other walls. So if they wanted to have protected it, they easily could have and would have. They wanted it to be open and available for these agitators, these provocateurs, so that they could get in there and control the narrative. Now, in this article, let's point out a couple things here. It just talks about, bracing for possible violence, U.S. Capitol has mobilized the National Guard ahead of planned protests by Donald Trump supporters, that the supporters are planning to rally Tuesday and Wednesday, seeking to bolster President Trump's unproven claims of widespread voter fraud. So clearly this is a leftist article. A pro-Trump rally in December and in violence, blah, blah, blah. So they're making this argument that, okay, so there was violence at the last protest that Trump had in December. Proud Boys got into it with some Black Lives Matter. Someone was stabbed. Enrique Tarrio was recently arrested. He was arrested for the burning of the Black Lives Matter sign. They talk about Tarrio some more. All right, so let's continue. At a November rally, he drew 15,000 people. All right. Okay, he talks about the election officials from both political parties, governors, key battleground states, and Trump's former Attorney General Bill Barr have said there is no widespread voter fraud. Okay, so not surprised that we also saw Bill Barr in this recent hearing saying this. Downtown D.C. businesses boarding up their windows. Mayor Muriel Bowser requested a limited National Guard deployment to help bolster the Metropolitan Police Department. During a press conference Monday, Bowser asked the local area residents to stay away from the downtown D.C. and avoid confrontations with anyone who is looking for a fight. But she warned, "We will not allow people to incite violence, intimidate our residents, or cause destruction to our city." Okay, so there's all this preparation taking place, and there's all this talk of that we need to be prepared, and that these people who are these Trump supporters are the big, bad, violent boogeyman, right? But then, on the other hand, you have the Democrats saying, we didn't know. We thought this was just going to be peaceful and that we didn't need to have security. So you have this confliction here. So they want to cover up all this other evidence that's out there that they were planning and that they were aware that there was a potential, because they don't want us to home in on the fact that Nancy Pelosi left the House the Capitol completely vulnerable, that she failed to do her duty to request the National Guard. Okay? They don't want us talking about that, which they don't want to let us see Nancy Pelosi's communications with her sergeant of arms either. Okay, so this is where the article gets interesting. It talks about how they were, the person in this news article was actually communicating with a U.S. defense official, and that this is where they talk about the Capitol and whether the Capitol is going to have defense or not. So some 340 D.C. National Guard members will be activated, with about 115 on duty in the streets at any given time. Officials said Guard members will be used to set up traffic control points, and this is throughout the city, okay, and at the metro stops. And then some of our intelligence certainly suggests there will be increased crowd sizes. D.C. police have posted signs throughout the downtown warning that carrying any sort of firearm is illegal. So they were worried about people carrying firearms. Because D.C. does not have a governor, the designated commander of the city's National Guard is Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy. Okay, so the defense official said that there will be no active duty military troops in the city, and the U.S. military will not be providing any aircraft intelligence. The D.C. Guard will provide specialized teams that will be prepared to respond to any chemical or biological incident. So let's see right here. At previous pro-Trump protests, police have sealed off Black Lives Matter Plaza. Okay, so where is this other part? The National Park Service has received 3 separate applications for pro-Trump protesters. On here. Okay, where is it? Organizers plan a rally Tuesday at Freedom Plaza. I might have skipped over the part I was looking for because I was reading so fast. Where does it say? All right, well, I can't find it right now, but I do remember in this article, there's a part. Yeah, here we go. But the officials said there will be no D.C. Guard members on the National Mall or at the U.S. Capitol. So this is where they're confirming, okay, that they know that there's basically been a decision that there's not going to be National Guard at the National Mall or U.S. Capitol, but there's going to be National Guard in the city of D.C., in the metropolitan area. So why would you have the National Guard in the area where no one's really going to be at, but then not have the National Guard in the area where all the protesting is going to happen? Doesn't make sense, does it? No, it does not. Well, it does if you wanted things to go the way it did on January 6th, that's for sure. Okay, so as far as the House Sergeant of Arms, the House Sergeant of Arms also resigned. So we saw that the DC Capitol Police resigned over this whole thing. But also, Nancy Pelosi's House Sergeant at Arms resigned over the Capitol breach as well. Isn't that interesting? Which she threw both of them under the bus. Both of them wanted, or we at least know the chief of the Capitol Police wanted the National Guard. But it's odd also that the House Sergeant at Arms resigned over the whole thing. Are we going to hear testimony from them? Yeah, following Capitol riots. So the Senate Sergeant at Arms resigned following the Capitol riots. So Senator Mitch McConnell, the Rhino, he could have directed his Senate Sergeant at Arms to have directed his Senate Sergeant of Arms to direct the Capitol Police to have the National Guard there. But he did not do that either. So it looks like we have both the Democrats and their queen, Nancy Pelosi, and the Rhino King, Mitch McConnell, choosing to allow the Capitol to be vulnerable on such a tumultuous day. Come on now. Come on. And then both their Sergeant at Arms resign. Are they just like, throwing these Sergeant at Arms under the bus or what? Here's just another article showing Trump admin was ready to deploy National Guard on January 6th. Capitol Police timeline shows. So more evidence of this, okay? So PolitiFact can shove it. I'm tired of these left-wing fact-checker sites putting out blatant fake news and misinformation. And just watch, I'll probably be flagged as misinformation because this is what happens when you have left-wing dominated social media platforms. They push whatever political narrative they want to push. And then if you don't go along with their narrative, if what you're saying is outside their narrative, they're going to try to ban your video, delete your video, or fact check you, or put some little thing at the bottom of your video that says, this video is a misinformation. No, it's not, because I literally just cited everything. So if you want to go there with me, YouTube, actually watch the full video and read through the resources that I showed. I cited and resourced everything that I'm saying here, okay? It's literally redundant. Look at all these articles, okay? Look at all these articles. Now, this one's interesting. Pelosi accused of hiding info on her role in security breakdown on January 6th. So this is another interesting thing. She's been concealing information about her culpability in the security breakdown during January 6th riot, according to Republican lawmakers who have been pursuing those documents since immediately after the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Gee, I wonder if those documents just went missing during the Capitol attack. Wouldn't that be so convenient? She could just be like, yeah, it just went missing. Somebody took it. Representative Rodney Davis of Illinois said Miss Pelosi is stonewalling. He is the top Republican on the House Administration Committee, which oversees the management of the Capitol complex. Sergeant at Arms, at the direction of the Speaker, had refused to provide us their communications surrounding January 6th. I believe those records will show there was a lot of communications and coordination between the Speaker's office and law enforcement officials leading up to and on January 6th, Ms. Davis wrote in a statement Tuesday. So we have Nancy Pelosi refusing to hand over her information, her communications with her Sergeant of Arms. Why would she be doing that? And then why do they want to give Trump such a hard time? Trump's the president. He was the president. He had executive privilege. And then they want to act like Trump's trying to hide something? Well, what's Nancy Pelosi trying to hide? She's clearly not handing over her communications with the Sergeant at Arms. Why wouldn't she want to do that? Why wouldn't she want to prove that, yes, we did everything we were supposed to do? Exactly. So now let's go to this article here. says in a February 1 letter to Pelosi, Sund wrote he approached the two sergeants at arms to request the assistance of the National Guard, as I had no authority to do so without an emergency declaration. So he's literally like, in every different article, this is being cited, okay, that this happened. This happened. And this was talked about a bunch during the hearing. This was talked about in the hearing that we're not going to blame the Capitol Police for not protecting the Capitol. We're not even going to go there. Because how dare you? They risked their lives. You know what? The Capitol Police officers who died, who actually, like, one of them had a heart attack, you know, things happened, right? They want to blame that on the protesting, the rioting, and on Trump. But what about the Sergeant at Arms? What about the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader? What about Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell and their roles in all of this? If they had the National Guard there, if they had the fencing, all that stuff that they typically have, none of that would have happened, okay? None of it would have happened. They wanted it to happen, guys. They wanted it to happen. Now, these groups that I was warning about, look at this map. Look at that map, and you tell me what that is. That's a map of the National Mall. Do you see the red-lined area right there? That is the Capitol building. So they were actually targeting Democrats and Republicans on this map because they didn't care which side. It was like, we're going to target one side if it goes one way, and we're going to target the other side if it goes another way. Okay? That's what they were talking about in their Zoom meetings. So it wasn't that they were only going to target Republicans. You know, they said, we'll even target the Democrats. That's what they were talking about in these Zoom meetings. Talking about taking over government buildings and saying there are going to be people there. They're going to take over buildings. And we should just let them. And we should just help them. Okay? Teaching each other to use Hong Kong-style protest tactics, Arab Spring tactics, Black Bloc, all that stuff. Okay? Very organized, highly organized groups of people that have done these things time and time again at other protests throughout the nation, where buildings were taken over, buildings were literally burned, police stations burned. Highly organized, tactical people, these groups are, okay? You had the leaders of Black Lives Matter, Extinction Rebellion, shut down D.C. This was their turf, their area. We saw people dressed in Black Bloc. We saw Antifa cells. One of America's top war correspondents, Michael Yon, who literally has traveled around and studied Antifa, was there with his partner, and they were both capturing Antifa cells and essentially recording and noting what they were doing at the Capitol when the Capitol siege was happening. And you see these videos of these people just literally like working together with comms and wearing the tactical clothes and the vests and wearing specific gloves to signal each other and working in a very tactical, coordinated way that you see and you can recognize the style of if you're someone who continually goes and attends these protests. And that's what Michael Yon could essentially speak to. And so he said, literally out of his mouth, I recognized Antifa cells there using Hong Kong style tactics that I had seen when I was out there covering Hong Kong protests with the Antifa there. I've seen Antifa cells using tactics I've seen in Portland and everywhere else. There, at DC, on January 6th, doing the breaching of the Capitol. Okay? So we have that, and then we also have these videos of them talking about taking over government buildings. All of this stuff handed over to the DC Metro Police, Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, the FBI. Then these are the same individuals and people who they use their authority and them saying there was no evidence that there could be any potential for violence or that there was going to be groups of people or extremists that were going to target these buildings. Really? Really? You want to try that again? That no one gave you any evidence or that there was no evidence? Come on now. It's complete baloney. So that's what needs to be brought up and talked about in these January 6 hearings. But will it? No, because these hearings are a sham. They're one-sided, highly politicized, clown show, primetime hearings where this is just for the midterms, guys. This is for the midterms. And this is really to try to take out President Trump and all the people around him. They told everyone, we're coming after Trump and everyone around him. Anyone that aided and abetted Trump is going down. They're on a list, all right? So they're going to take him out. They want to try to take him down as fast as they can and the best way they can. And they wanted to politicize everything because they're, you know, what is it? They're sadists, okay? Just like, who was that? Stephen Colbert or whatever the other night. Just the look on his face when he was all giddy and excited about these January 6th hearings. It's sadistic, okay? Sadistic. That's what it is. So I highly suggest, if you haven't yet watched my documentary, Side of the Steel, please watch it. It's for free. You can watch it up on my website, millennialmillie.com. It's probably one of the most in-depth videos on January 6th you're going to see, okay? Still to this day, much of what I've reported on has been vindicated. Vindicated. This is me literally reporting. Where is it? I showed that clip again. Dang it. Well, you can see part of me right there. There I was in my little jacket. That's me literally inside a hotel room at the Willard, where I'm showing the video evidence up on the screen of some of the stuff that was collected, that I had collected after January 6th, and was presenting and working closely with Rudy Giuliani and others, trying to really get to the bottom of January 6th. So let me just tell you, I have a really good bird's eye view into this whole thing. And, like, there's no way, this is my opinion, just from what I saw with my own eyes, and I'm not going to get into everything I saw, but there's no way in hell that Trump and his people and his team could have planned what happened on January 6th. There's no way. So the idea that, like, the Democrats are trying to say that this was some big conspiracy that Trump planned and that this was all, like, you know, a planned coup of some sort is the biggest laughing joke on the face of the planet. There's no way. No, but I'll tell you who had the wherewithal to plan, who had the organization and the skill set and the connections to do it. I'll show you. Here's a group right here. In this video that I talk about,
and programs analyst,
working with the FBI, working with all these insiders and the bureaucrats,
3.5 years,
DHS, FDA, all they had an entire
if you read the mainstream
government
press,
in wait.
Like, they all have signal
entire
accounts,
contingency government line
text
in wait.
them, leak everything you
Very
can.
coordinated group of people, all working with the Democrat Party. Okay, you know who else would appear on these feeds with these groups? AOC. Chuck Schumer, others. The Democrat Party coordinates with these left-wing radical groups. So they had the coordination. They had the organization. They were working with the FBI and these agencies that hated Trump. Okay? The same agencies that said, no, we don't see any threat. Don't have the National Guard there. You know? Yeah. Trump was pretty alone in this. I mean, the FBI has pretty much been taken over. The DOJ taken over. CIA taken over. NSA taken over by the establishment deep state swamp. I'm not just going to say Democrat because it's Rhino, Democrat, whatever. It's a cabal. It's a cabal of establishment cronies, really establishment organized crime cabal that you're either part of their club or you're not. And if you're part of their club, you're following their agenda, their globalist agenda. And if you're not, you're not. And they want to do anything they can to get rid of you. And so when you're operating in that type of a realm, you're truly the outsider. And I could see that. You know, I could see that. You know, we saw Pence and how he completely just turned his back on President Trump, betrayed him. But we're not surprised. Why would we be surprised? Pence is an establishment hack. You know, a lot of people initially were very concerned about Trump having initially put him as his vice president. But that's what it was. It was essentially a deal with the establishment GOP, like the establishment Republicans, because in essence, you needed to have this establishment Republicans on your side somewhat if you're going to try to get the RNC to nominate you, to get the Republican Party nomination. So you had to have their guy, Mike Pence. What did Mike Pence do the second he got into the White House? He literally filled up the White House with Bush holdovers, with Bush campaigners, people literally that worked on the Bush campaign. And a lot of the people that worked on the Trump campaign were kind of just forgot about. And so there lies the problem, okay? And it's not, you can't just sit there and blame it all on Trump. Like everyone, oh, Trump didn't do everything perfect. He didn't do everything I wanted him, or he didn't make all the best decisions that I thought could have been made. Well, you don't know all the information. You haven't been given all of the disclosures, okay? You don't know how the situation is in this country. You don't know how the powers that be truly operate. The deep state, the swamp, all of that, and how to even try to maneuver inside of it. It's pretty dark, the situation in our country right now. And it's not, you can't just blame it all on Trump. We have to take responsibility as American people because it's our government and we let it get this bad. We neglected it. And for us young people that are just now getting into the game, you know, our parents, our grandparents, their grandparents, our great-grandparents, they neglected it. So, unfortunately, it's now our responsibility to have to deal with the aftermath of that and have to figure out a way to deal with the corruption, the DC swamp, and we still have to drain the swamp. We need to drain the swamp. If we don't drain the swamp's going to drain any president, any person we try to put in there. And we saw that happen firsthand with what happened on January 6th. American people put their president in. They voted him in. The swamp drained him. Okay? Why? Because there's too much. It's too big of a beast for one person to fight alone. So we need to get smart about how we take our government back. And that could be people deciding to go work for certain government agencies or go work in small city council or city legislatures or judges or being attorney generals locally. I mean, it could be just small steps like that of people just getting more active, okay? And that's what it's going to take, is us to all just start becoming more politically active, electing in good people, backing good people, and refusing to support the establishment candidate. Don't just support it because it hasn't necessarily an R by its name, because it could just be a Republican in name only. All right? Obviously, we're in a tough position because it's like we either have to choose Republican establishment, part of the crony deep state swamp, right? Or in some cases, it's the Democrat communists, the Democrat communist socialists who are part of the deep state crony establishment anyway. So it's like, what do you pick in that instance, right? So, we're in a bad spot. That's why we need more people, more patriots to start running against the rhinos, okay? Run against the rhinos. Step one, definitely. Run against the rhinos. Get in there and do something good for our country. There are a handful of good Republican representatives in there right now that are doing some good for our country. We just need more of them. And any of you guys running, if you're a good patriot, I'd love to help support you. So definitely reach out to me because, I know I did a fair amount of interviews at CPAC of some people running, but that's what we need. We need more people running. And obviously we need to fix our broken election system, clearly. We clearly need to fix the broken election system. All right, guys. Well, I'm sure the January 6th day 2 hearing is probably already starting right now. Let's see, January 6th hearing. If not, it's going to be starting soon. Let me see. Or maybe not. Maybe they're not doing it today. I'll have to find out when day 2 is. But yeah, there's supposed to be a couple days of this stuff, guys. So stay tuned. I'll be giving you guys updates. I'm going to be watching them and kind of giving you little highlights from it and boil downs, and then giving you evidence to fact check what they've been talking about and points they've been trying to make or arguments they've been trying to make. So thank you for joining me on this live stream. Remember, guys, when I'm not live streaming on Millennial Millie on YouTube or on Facebook, I'm probably also live streaming on my website. And if you want to find my live streams on my website, just go to millennialmillie.com. And I live stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So just literally go to millennialmillie.com next Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can watch my live show for free. Okay? Or if you want to watch at whatever time is convenient for you, you could subscribe here on, Twitch, and then at that point you can watch it anytime you choose to. You could also watch some of the episodes that I had from my Millennial Millie show on Lindell TV. So just literally, you could thumb through them here. There's a couple different new episodes I just recently put up. So definitely check those out. Definitely check those out, guys. All right, so you could support my work by going to millennialmillie.com, making a purchase, t-shirts, posters, hats, gear. I've got it all. The Drain the Swamp shirts, definitely. I'm on a mission to drain the swamp. And if you are on a mission to drain the swamp too, definitely wear that and let people know. It's a great way to spark up conversations with people, and they're like, whoa, what is this? Well, it's that we need to drain the swamp. We need to get rid of the establishment swamp because it's taken over the Capitol. It's taken over the House. And definitely I'm using the truth. I'm using my ability to exercise free speech to fight back against the swamp. And that is what that shirt represents. And I also have posters here which I can autograph for you guys. So they're really big and really nice. Check them out. Drain the Swamp posters. Your purchases help support my ability to continue reporting and doing journalism. These things cost money. I got to keep the website up and running. I got to be able to continue to index all this information and archive all this information because it gets taken down on most of these other social media sites. And this is a time more than ever that we need to be able to have access to this important work, because this is all going to become very crucial right now throughout the January 6th hearings. And we know that they're trying to come after Trump. They're trying to impeach him like retroactively, and they're trying to actually indict him criminally. They're really going for it, guys. So we need to get this information out there. So please share the articles, please. You could share the PSYOP the Steal video. I mean, that video got 233,000 views, but it should get even more. Many people in the nation haven't seen it. Like, just share it out on social media and let your friends and family know, hey guys, this is the most in-depth report documentary on what really happened with January 6th. Watch this video so people can have context when they're watching the January 6th hearings. So that's a way that you could help, as well as like sharing the Sunrise Exposed stuff, the election coup d'etat plot exposed. All these articles are key to get the information out there. So that's another way that you can support. If you cannot help support me financially right now, just sharing things out, getting the word out to people, because this is an information war. It really is. They have tactical PSYOP capabilities that they deploy on these social media platforms, and they're using it to try to manipulate the minds of your friends and family across these social media platforms, guys. So you got to fight back. You got to get the information out there. Another way we can continue to fight back also against the big tech is through getting on QUX, the new QUX network. join the portal universe, get off of their grid, get onto a new grid so we can all communicate with each other, because who knows if they're going to use this hearing, guys, to justify just banning us all and saying anyone who, is a Trump supporter or, was even within a certain, distance of the U.S. Capitol or something on January 6th, or attended even the protest just as a peaceful protester. Everyone should be banned off social media. We don't know where this is going to go and what it's going to lead to. And it's just, they've always been trying to go after him so that once they can take him down, they can take all of us down. So that's really the scary, terrifying thing here. And we definitely need to be able to stay in communication. And all these other websites on the internet, it seems, the social media sites are vulnerable. We've seen them being hacked time and time again, taken down, whatever. QUX is not vulnerable. It's inside of its own private hardware network. You cannot take it down. It's literally, as long as there's boxes out there in circulation, you can't take the network down. So get on QUX. It's a way for us to all have private encrypted communications, a way for us to share content, share information, not worry about being censored, a way for us to economically advance our own lives as we're being, taken out by highly competitive big corporations like Amazon and others because of their ability to harvest data. So if you're a small business owner, it's definitely something to look into, because you can definitely improve your business by getting on QUX and getting in there early. Grandfather yourself in there. You're going to want to do that. So go to QUX.tv and go to shop, and that is where you can get your QUX TV box. And if you want, you can use a promo code Millie, MILLIE, and you can get a $15 discount. Okay? It's key that we have you supporting real solutions. We need real solutions, guys. And this is the only real solution I've seen. All right? So get on QUX, get a box. If you want to find out more about QUX as well, there's a QUX Telegram. So you can join the QUX Telegram. There's plenty of happy QUX box owners on there in the Telegram that can share information about it with you. The tech team's in there as well, answering questions. So you could join the QUX Telegram or get a box, find out for yourself. It's a wonderful piece of technology, and we're really excited to be able to present this to you guys because it's the first actual real viable solution to the big tech problem that we're all facing, the big tech monster we're all facing. So, all right, guys, I have to remind you always about QUX because it is key. It's an actual solution. I'm tired of just, complaining about all the problems and not talking about solutions. Because if we don't start somewhere, what are we doing? Like, we can all just complain all day about what the Democrats are doing, what the rhinos are doing, what the deep state's doing, what big tech's doing, what, all these people are doing. But here's the difference. They're doing something. And we're not. If we're just sitting here complaining about what they're doing and not doing something, not taking action, then what are we doing? Like, we're losing at that point. And I don't want to lose. I want to fight back, and I want to go down trying, okay? Fight back and go down trying. That's my motto, or fight back and win, right? There's no not fighting back. We're going to fight back. And we're gonna do whatever it takes to win this war. We're gonna win because we're gonna take action. And when you guys take action, you guys have all the power, really and truly. When you guys take action, you're unstoppable. So take some action today. If you haven't got your QUX box, get your QUX box. If you already have a QUX box, get a QUX box for friends and family. The more boxes we have out there in circulation, the bigger the network grows. The bigger the network grows, the more expansion, okay? And the more people inside of it, and the more content, and the more everything, more businesses, everything. So we need to grow. That is the key right now. And if you really think about it, there's no subscription fees. Like everyone's like, do you have to pay a subscription? Like I know with Roku, you have to pay all these subscriptions. There's no subscription fees, okay? So that's it. $149 and no subscription fees. I mean, you can't beat that, guys. And then guess what? You use the Millie promo code and it takes it down even from that. So let's see, Millie, apply promo code. So then it takes it down. Okay, $15. Okay, there's obviously sales tax, which got to give it to government, and shipping and handling. So it's actually $154. All right. So definitely use that promo code. So at least that takes down taxes and handling. Geez, everything's gone up, especially from shipping and everything because of all the gas prices. It's crazy. So yeah, go to QUX.com and, you know, if the economy fails, guys, these are going to be really viable tools for us to all stay in communication with each other and to be able to actually network with each other in our own local communities. Like, here's what I imagine. In the QUX marketplace, just as there's going to be local ads where you can see the local businesses in your area, you can see them actually running their own like organic ads that they make on the portals and stuff you watch. If you select local ads and you choose to share your zip code, right? There's also like local businesses, right? So you can actually in the merchant store see all your local businesses. Like, so if, you know, I've got a bunch of chickens in my backyard, there's the Homesteading Act. Our chickens just recently, I kid you not, like today we went and there was like 30 plus eggs. It was insane. A lot of eggs. They're just laying them out. And I saw another house down the road that had a sign up in their front yard that was like, you know, fresh eggs, $3 a dozen, right? And they had just a little sign on the yard. And I drive past that like every day because I'm on the street and I'm always thinking about it. And I'm always thinking about, well, wouldn't that be great to be able to get all these people who do all this homesteading, and I might even want to, because there's the Homesteading Act, which makes it easy to do some of the stuff, but all these people doing the homesteading could essentially create their own portals or market, like stores in the portal universe, and actually be selling to each other and even doing home deliveries through all of that. And I mean, it's just a great way for people to be able to do business with each other, to work with each other. And that's why I'm really excited about it as well, because it's like, it's not just the content sharing aspect. There's a lot more to it. The portal universe is just, it's something else, and it's revolutionary. It's going to change the way people share content, communicate, do business together. It's going to be awesome. So definitely, if you're interested in that type of an electronic tool for your life, get a QUX box at QUX.tv. Get on the portal universe. And this is the thing. The more people we get in the portal universe, the more stores, businesses, content there's going to be. So that's why it's like, get on here, people. The tool is yours. It's here. We're presenting you the tool. Use it. Create something with it. Build your own world inside of it. It's a tool. It's not ever going to be yanked from you like these other electronics could be if you decline the social credit score system and the biometric internet IDs and everything else they have planned for us. Okay? So there's my reminder, daily reminder, get on QUX. Plus, if I get banned on YouTube and Facebook for this video, you'll know where to find me. You'll know where to find me for sure on QUX in the portal universe. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show today. And at my next show on Monday, I'm sure we will be talking more about January 6th and some other new hot topics that are relevant to Monday. So check back in Monday, 5 p.m. at millennialmillie.com for my show. And I will see you then.